After the end of the Adventure Time spin-off series titled Fionna and Cake, which consisted of 10 episodes that aired weekly throughout August 2023, the show had gained enough traction in order to be greenlit for a second season. And then finally, during the Fionna and Cake panel at New York Comic Con, the release date for season 2 was officially announced to be coming on October 23rd. And so before the new season comes out, I'll be recapping and breaking down every episode, beginning with episode 1, which is titled Fionna Campbell.
Fionna is having dreams of a magical world where she fights monsters with the help of an ice prince. And obviously Cake is also having the same dream. Later in the episode, Fionna goes to work and asks some of the other gender-bent characters riding the bus if they ever dream about stuff like that, and instantly showed that they dream about the things that they are in the normal Adventure Time world. And from this point on in the episode, it was like the ice was calling Cake to come to it. Also, I want to point out the big old Betty statue in the middle of their town. It just shows that this world really does only exist because of the Ice King. Anyway, at the end of the episode, a portal forms out of ice and Cake runs through it, which is once again showing the connection to the Ice King and how he is the sole reason this universe even exists. Now moving on to episode 2, where things take a deeper, genuinely more important side of things, especially when it comes to the lore regarding the series. Starting from the very beginning during the intro, we go into Simon's head and see Gold, who is clearly going to play a key role in the plot of this series. I'll be touching on that later. And then we see Fionna and Finn running, showing the sheer differences between them and their universes. And we also see Finn and Jake's treehouse and how it looked at the end of Come Along With Me, and also how it looked in the 1000 plus episodes. So I wonder if that means we're gonna end up seeing Shermie and Beth again. But anyway, the actual episode starts out with Simon dreaming of the time he spent with young Marceline after the wartime. Simon then turns on the TV and plays a song we hear him sing in the episode Simon and Marcy. He's clearly reminiscing and missing having her around in his life. Simon works a normal job as a normal human living in a world of futuristic humans in a very futuristic town. And the people there seem to look at him as like an old person who is not with the times, even to an extent where this one kid called him a boring sad guy because Betty died. They also ask why he doesn't write Fionna and Cake anymore, and they act like they miss when he was the Ice King, and for that reason he starts to miss it as well to some extent. At least having people care about him. He still holds a grudge or hatred for the actions he made due to the power of the crown, even to the point where he has a panic attack over it. Before mentioning the Gaul-related things, I'd like to just mention that Simon has the Enchiridion. But yeah, Simon has a shrine of sorts for Golb, or a room to attempt to summon Golb with. I'll be talking about this later when it becomes relevant. Simon then goes to Rootbeer Guy's pub and talks to Finn about his feelings, which leads to Finn taking him on an adventure to feel better. Finn takes them to a forest to blindfold themselves, and when Simon asks why they're blindfolded, Finn tells him to trust in fate and that the invisible forces of the universe will guide them to where they need to be. And that entire scene reminded me exactly of the episode The Hall of Egress. But anyway, fate led them to what Huntress Wizard apparently calls the most ancient place in Ooh, in the heart of the forest. Finn ends up having to kill a monster to save Simon, but I just wanted to mention that afterward he ends up thanking it for its sacrifice, showing a genuine respect in nature and wildlife, which I think is an ideology he may have picked up from Huntress Wizard. Finn thinks if he distracts Simon from his negative thoughts, that everything will be fine. I think Finn has always had that kind of mentality even when he was a kid. That's obviously his way of coping and just not Simon's. When they're done adventuring, Finn brings up Huntress Wizard. He kind of brings her up a lot in the time he's on screen. Obviously, by the end of the series, it was hinted that they were a thing, especially in the episode 17 where she gave him an elk's heart, and now we get shown he talks about her a lot and still goes to see her when he's an adult. Maybe your relationship is still intact. Simon calls Marceline and sees she is trying to get matching tattoos with PB, and it wasn't working, which was actually really funny. But yeah, I think Simon hearing that Marcy is having like fun without him affects him. Whilst nearing the end of the episode, Simon attempts to summon Golb in the same way we saw Betty doing it, chanting a spell connected to a large evil energy supply, which in this scenario and Come Along With Me was Maja the Sky Witch. In this instance, Simon was using the now evil Choose Goose, which we first saw in the Distant Lands episode Wizard City. Anyway, before Simon tried to summon Golb, he was reminiscing over being the Ice King and creating Fionna and Cake. And this whole thing just reminded me of the episode Puhoi. Finn was festering and in his own head and made a different reality, to which then he left, created a portal to Golb's room. After Simon's chant to summon Golb failed on the first attempt due to Chusgoose interrupting him, Simon starts to attempt again with more emotion, and a portal began to form on his head. The same portal we saw Cake go into in the last episode. But yeah, just like I was saying, Golb holds some sort of connection to these portals and how they come into existence. He plays some tie into the specific mindset that Finn and Simon have both now festered with in some way. But yeah, Fionna didn't manage to make it through the portal, I guess, so I guess we still have to see how she gets there to reunite with Cake, and I'm also very curious of what the fuck Simon is gonna do. Adventure Time Fionna and Cake episodes 3 and 4 are now officially airing, and after watching these episodes, I gotta say my brain is boggling, as we basically got some direct answers to questions people have been asking about for years. But nonetheless, let's get straight into Fionna and Cake episode 3, titled Cake the Cat. This episode begins with none other than Finn the human and Jake the dog. And whilst I was watching this scene, I was praying for an answer as to how Jake was even here, as obviously he is confirmed dead. And then they showed a clearly depressed Prismo who was watching this clip. Now, if you don't remember, in Adventure Time it was shown that Prismo can basically create realities and edit them as he sees fit. And given this information, I came to the conclusion that Prismo was making this a reality where Jake never died and is still going on adventures with Finn. And if this is the case, it really shows even more so just how much Jake's death really impacted him. Anyway, it was awesome that they made a callback to the episode Jake suit. A ripped adult Finn wearing it looks so fucking sick. We then step back into Fiona's world right after the events of the first episode, where Cake jumped into the ice portal and came out of Simon's head. As Cake didn't exactly know where she was, she started hectically looking for Fionna on the human island. And during this scene, we actually get a shot of Finn's mom, Minerva. It's cool to see that her robots are still roaming around helping people. Cake ends up falling off the floating island, and in the scene, they show a shot of the Candy Kingdom. I wonder if it's still the royal place that it was that seemingly had to have a dictator of sorts fit for the throne, such as Princess Bubblegum or the King of Oo. Or if it's maybe been set free from this political-ass tyranny that we got to witness in the original series. We then see the ice thing, which at this point has already lost its body somehow and became just this beard-like creature, which is exactly how we saw it in the 1000 plus episodes. I'd really like to know what happened to make him lose his body. But nonetheless, when Cake finally hits the ground, we get a very unexpected cameo from the talking squirrel we saw in the season 5 episode Up a Tree. And then he gave Cake one of the same cursed apples that he gave to Finn. This whole scene was just one random big episode callback, and I honestly really dig it. Going back to Simon though, he's still trying to summon Golb, but as we saw in the previous episodes, doing this is what makes a portal into the Fionna and Cake world. So yes, this does happen again, but this time Fionna actually gets through. So yes, Fionna and Cake are now both actually in the Land of Oo, which is something literally all Adventure Time fans have been wanting for years. Nonetheless, Simon is devastated. All he managed to do was bring Fionna and Cake into his world, which is obviously something he holds a complete grudge against. And in his eyes, this was the last chance to get Betty back. As hype as Fionna and Cake being here is for us fans behind the screen, I feel very sympathetic for Simon during this moment. Fionna then wanders into the Land of Oo to where she eventually manages to reunite with Cake, but not long after they are both teleported away in a very familiar way. It's the same thing that would happen whenever Prismo would summon anything into his room. A perfect wrap up to the episode, as the next one is titled Prismo the Wishmaster. This episode begins with an introduction to the red guy that we saw in the trailer. It seems that he hunts down people who betray the organization that he works for, or people who are just a danger to the world. In his list of people to hunt, we get to see Finn's dad, Martin. And we see that his violation is something called desertion, which could be referring to the fact that he got wished away by a comet and became a god of sorts. Or it could be the fact that he's an escaped prisoner from the Citadel. But nonetheless, Prismo is also on this list for making a violation of sorts, and the red guy is choosing to hunt him down. Going back to Prismo though, he's in the middle of making a wish deal with Wyatt. But Prismo's remote was beeping really loudly, so Wyatt wished that it was quiet enough for him to think. The wish is granted, and Wyatt is taken into a very quiet world, where Tree Trunks is a criminal on the run from Princess Bubblegum, who just has a Glock. At the end of the scene, we see Princess Bubblegum hysterically laughing while the lich watches her creepily from the background. So I guess the lich is still around in one way or another. Prismo finally acknowledges the beeping sound on his remote, but when he clicks it, a screen shows up saying there was an urgent notice crossover, which is basically when someone from an alternate reality goes into another one, as shown in the episode crossover. As Prismo searches for the crossover, we get to see Huntress Wizard, Princess Bubblegum, Peppermint Butler, and Susan Strong. But eventually Prismo does manage to find the anomaly, which of course is Fionna and Cake, and he instantly teleports them to the time room. Prismo then summons Simon into the room as well to ask them how they got here. He ends up just looking into Simon's head and seeing saying that he was trying to summon gold. Prismo then explains his job as a wishmaster, which is to create realities based off of people's wishes, and he ends up using the farm world from the episode Finn the Human as an example for this. And this all led to us being told that Prismo created Fionna and Cake. He dead-ass canonically animated that shit on his laptop. But yeah, Prismo is not allowed to make his own universes, so he hid them inside of the Ice King's brain, making a direct callback to the episode Fionna and Cake and Fionna, where a red beam is shined on his head. Finally, the scene is answered, bro. People have been wanting answers to this scene forever, and now we know it was Prismo all along. But basically, when the Ice King was set back to normal and Come Along With Me, and Simon became boring and depressed due to losing Betty, of course this would change Fionna and Cake's world from the magical one that it was into a depressed one. It's literally an exact representation of the Ice King becoming Simon again. The red guy shows up, so Prismo hides the others in the same room that we saw in the episode Is That You? Prismo then says that the red guy is named the Scarab. He is a god auditor with the authority to report Prismo to his boss if he were to ever mess up. Prismo's boss still remains a mystery, but now we know that him and others work under the same organization, under some sort of god. I wonder if his true identity will be revealed in this series. We then enter what's known as the Time Core, where we basically get to see how time is created and sent through the multiverse. Seeing this once again reminds me of the scene where the Lich fell into the multiverse. I also pray that at some point during the series this becomes relevant. Prismo then accidentally tells the Scarab about the unauthorized universe that he created. He asks to make a deal with them, and the Scarab insists on getting the time room. But after hearing that, Prismo literally just up and left. The Scarab then confronted Fionna and Cake, threatening to incinerate them. And so Prismo gave them his time remote, saying they can go wherever they want. And so Fionna and Cake teleport away, bringing Simon along for the ride, who then says that the only way to save the world and bring magic back is for him to become the Ice King once again. I do think that they will find another way, but if this does end up being the outcome, then I'll honestly be pretty sad. As much as I do love the Ice King as a character, I really want Simon to just be free from the curse that is the crown. Adventure Time Fionna and Cake episodes 5 and 6 have been released. So as always, I'll be going over the events and lore that was shown throughout the 48 minutes of new content, starting with episode 5, which is titled Destiny. This episode begins with a look back at the Farm World universe, a world that Prismo created based off Finn's wish for the Lich to have never existed during the events of the episode Finn the Human. In this world, Simon ends up dying in an effort to freeze the Lich bomb, and afterward the Ice Crown ends up being put on by this world's version of Finn. After being shown a reminder of this universe, we go back to where we left off in episode 4, where Simon decides he needs to become the Ice King again. But for him to do that, they would have to find another Ice Crown somewhere out there in the multiverse. But as they already are in another world, they decide to start looking here. But as they walk through the streets of this run-down town filled with long-nosed people, we can instantly tell that this is the Farm World, further confirming as they bring out older Big Destiny, who was the main antagonist that Farm World Finn had to face. As Big Destiny preaches to a crowd of people, we get to see a boy that looks very similar to Finn. And so I thought that this was maybe his little brother that we saw his mother carrying in the past Farm World episodes, but that ends up not being the case as we are later shown. But anyway, we also see Chuscoos, who offers to sell the crown to Simon, but it ends up being a fake, and so in anger, Cake uses her stretching abilities to punch him. But as this world has not seen magic since Finn wore the crown, the Destiny gang pursued after them. The boy who looks like Finn ends up helping them out, but as Big Destiny's daughter actually ends up being too sick to fight them, she just tells them to never come back there again. While also leaving the town, it's revealed that the boy's father is the one who found the crown, indicating that his father is actually Finn, who we then see living the proper farm life, chopping trees next to his wooden cabin. As his son introduces Fionna, Cake, and Simon to him, he sees Cake's shape-shifting abilities and says that he does not do magic, showing that he may hold a grudge over it due to his past actions as Ice Finn. As we enter Finn's cabin, we are shown that he does have more kids, one being revealed to have the name Bonnie, which is also what normal Finn named his daughter in the episode Puhoy. We also see Jake, who is clearly much older and probably nearing his final years. If this is anything to go off, then maybe Jake did die from old age. Farmer Finn then gives his family and the others a bowl of soup, and his kid states that it's the soup that his mother was making the day that she died, making me very curious as to if it's this world's version of Huntress Wizard, and if not, who else it could be. Later that night, the Scarab appears at Finn's doorstep in a shapeshifted form, saying he is looking for Fionna and Cake. Finn tells them to search elsewhere and then goes to warn the others to bounce, but they are already gone as Finn's kid takes them to the crater where the Lich bomb went off. They came here in search of the crown, but when they arrive, obviously it is destroyed. As in the episode crossover, Prismo uses his powers to edit their timeline so the bomb would destroy the crown. Nonetheless, Big Destiny's kid appears, but instead of it being for a fight, she actually ends up kissing Finn's kid. They then tell the story of how this came to be. As Finn's kid was searching the crater looking for anything cool, he managed to actually find a jewel that still remained from the crown. Big Destiny's daughter appeared, telling him that this was Destiny Gang's territory and that anything he finds would be theirs. And whilst clearly forming some form of attraction for this girl, he actually ends up giving her the jewel as a gift. But sadly, it gets revealed that this was actually the thing that was making her sick. Simon infuses the jewel with Prismo's remote to use it as a tracker for the crown in other worlds. The Destiny Gang then appears to attack them, but Farmworld Finn comes to the rescue. Shortly after, the Scarab also shows up, leading Fionna, Cake, and Simon to use the remote to make a quick escape. But the Scarab grabs them and actually manages to teleport away with them, ending episode 5 very suddenly. The next episode, titled The Winter King, begins with them running away from the Scarab in another new dimension. This one taking place in an ice kingdom run by the Ice Prince, who would end up saving them by freezing the Scarab. Fionna and Cake then explain that they need his crown so Simon can become the Ice King again in order to save their world. The Ice Prince then says that he cannot have his, but he will help him get another one. Simon then asks the Ice Prince how he acts so sane as he is still cursed by the crown. Ice Prince explains that he managed to overcome the crown and that it was as easy as manifesting your own reality, which when it comes to Adventure Time, it's been shown that that is indeed possible. As we wait for Ice Prince to create his new crown, we get to see a young Marceline. And I want to point out just the fact that she is blue as well as the other residents that live here. And this reminded me of the Elements miniseries, as when you enter the new Ice Kingdom taken over by Patience St. Pym, we see everyone who is taken over by her control is blue. A subtle hint that possibly this Ice Prince has more similarities to the antagonistic Patience St. Pym rather than the original Ice King. Simon then asks the Ice Prince if there's a Betty in this world, and he laughs, saying, "Oh, the dead one." He also states that he hasn't thought about her in a while and that she wasn't the love of his life in this universe. This world's Princess Bubblegum then appears, and Ice Prince says that she is known as the Candy Queen and a sworn enemy of the kingdom. It's a reverse of their roles in the normal Adventure Time, as before it was the Ice King being an enemy of the Candy Kingdom. She also puts them in a cell just like the Ice King would in the first seasons of Adventure Time. Candy Queen then tries to kill Ice Prince and Simon by putting them in a blender, but nonetheless, Fionna does manage to beat the Candy Queen and save the both of them. The Ice Prince then kisses Fionna, but I think due to the fact that Fionna is in the wrong world and is an anomaly that isn't supposed to exist, when she touches the crown, it glitches and turns it off, which resets the Ice Prince back to normal, but at this point he is old, and thus this ends up killing him, in what I felt was a very similar way to Simon's death in Infinity Train. But anyway, this melts the kingdom and turns Princess Bubblegum back to normal, showing that the Ice Prince had cast a spell projecting the curse of the crown onto the princess, showing that he did not overcome the crown whatsoever and was actually the villain the entire time. The Scarab then appears once more to attack Fionna, Cake, and Simon, and thus they must escape to another world once again. The world that they go to is kind of like a baby version of the show, as we see a little Ice King, a little Magic Man, Ricardio, Lady Rainicorn, the Prismo Guardians, the Lich, Cinnamon Bun, and Finn and Jake. It's clearly this world does not have a version of the crown. They pledge to keep searching with a brofist bond that little Finn also joins in on, which is pretty fucking cute. Adventure Time Fionna and Cake episodes 7 and 8 have been released, in which they made a lot of heavy lore implications whilst leaving much room for more unanswered and rather ambiguous questions. And so in this video, I'll be analyzing these new episodes and showing the connections and callbacks to the original series. Starting with Fionna and Cake episode 7, which is titled The Star. This episode begins with what are known as the Oozers walking through the city that was shown in the episode Simon and Marcy. The Oozers are the supposed humans who became mutagenic due to the nuclear waste from the Lich Bomb. The plot of the episode is then revealed as they show a little Marcy trying to survive after the events of the Mushroom War, but instead of having Simon by her side raising her, she finds him dead. Fionna, Cake, and Simon then enter the future of this universe, which is still in ruins and now seemingly fully taken over by vampires. This world's Princess Bubblegum then arrives in a Peppermint Butler-style tank, and it turns out that she runs a crew to hunt said vampires, as obviously Marceline didn't do so. The only reason Marceline hunted them in the original series was to protect the humans, as she had to care over them after she met Simon, and thus if Simon never was around, she would never have a reason to save the humans. We then see PB's crew, which consists of none other than Huntress Wizard and Finn's dad, Martin. These were some very unexpected cameos, but it's still nice to see the both of them. Suddenly, Fionna's backpack began to shake, and out came the baby Finn that we saw in the end of the last episode. They probably only did this for a cute factor in the episode, but it definitely had me questioning whether there would be any repercussions to this, such as how the baby world would be affected now that it doesn't have its Finn. As the gang drives toward the Vampire King's lair, we get to see a shot of this world's Billy. It seems that he never gave up on trying to protect the land of Vu, as he still carried his sword before he died. They then stroll upon two vamps in the street, in which after defeating leads to Marceline, the now proper vampire queen, to appear. Marceline then killed Martin via sucking his soul, which was honestly unexpected and saddened me quite a bit to see, even if this isn't necessarily our Martin. The team then arrives at the vampire palace and they plant a bunch of garlic bombs everywhere to kill them. And meanwhile this is happening, we get to see Marceline kill her vampire subordinate, which scares another into killing itself. This really just shows you how different Marceline would have been if she never met Simon. After they explode their garlic bombs, the Vampire King rises from his throne and instantly kills Huntress Wizard. As the Vampire King is distracted, Simon and Fionna decide now would probably be the best time to teleport away. But Cake chooses to attempt to steal the Vampire King's crown, and so Fionna and Cake fight over the remote, which only results in it getting snapped in half. Nonetheless, they click the teleport button and it still manages to work, ending episode 7 on yet another cliffhanger where we don't know where they're gonna end up. Regardless, I just want to mention that they left baby Finn here, and who knows how much it's gonna change the future of this world. It probably won't be mentioned again, but it would be cool if there was some sort of plot made over it. But moving on, the next episode is titled Jerry and begins with some real Adventure Time lore, as we get a closer look into how Simon and Betty came to be. Nonetheless, we jump back into the present right after the events of the previous episode, or once again in another universe, but now the teleport device is fully broken. And due to this fact, Cake is mad and ends up walking off in anger. Simon then tells more of him and Betty's story to Fionna, going back to his days of being a professor, discussing the ancient artifacts that he once saw, in which contains the armor of Zeldron, which was shown in the season 2 episode titled Blood Under the Skin, the wand of disbursement, which was the wand Glob used in the season 4 episode titled Sons of Mars, and the porcelain lamb, which was in the season 4 episode titled Beyond This Earthly Realm. Regardless, Simon's next expedition was to find the Enchiridion, in which he would have Betty join him in doing so. But before Simon continues the story, they get cut off by Cake screaming in the distance. We then enter Finn and Jake's treehouse and find out that BMO is still alive. Simon then asks BMO where everybody is, as it seems they're all dead, but BMO says they're all still around. Simon then asks if there's an Ice King, and BMO points to where the Ice Kingdom used to be but now isn't there. It seems that BMO is just pretending that everyone is still alive. The Scarab is then shown having to do a meeting of sorts with someone named Orbo, who seems to be higher in power, as the Scarab states that he's his boss but not the boss. He tries to tell him that Prismo created an unauthorized universe, but he doesn't believe him for the fact that Prismo is cool. But as the Scarab won't give up and threatens to call the real boss, Orbo headbutts the Scarab and they both disappear. Nonetheless, we enter the now barren Ice Kingdom, which is filled with a bunch of the Ice King's old stuff, including his secret tapes that we saw in the episode Holly Jolly Secrets, of mostly him just being his crazy sad self. But then suddenly before the tape ends, he turns into a skeleton, showing us once more that something or someone erased all life in an instance. Simon then continues to tell the story of him and Betty. They were returning from the expedition to find the Enchiridion with a success, and we then see the same shot of Simon that was shown in the episode I Remember You. And yeah, that's just some really good attention to detail. BMO then takes everyone to the Candy Kingdom to meet Princess Bubblegum, but it's instantly made obvious that she is also gone. And then it gets confirmed as BMO says that one day, everyone became a skeleton. But continuing Simon and Betty's story, we now jump to where she was about to leave on her trip. She leaves a note for Simon in the library, in which after reading, Simon runs to her house and finds her about to get on the bus. Simon stops her and says that he loved the note and wants her by his side, thus finally showing an animated version of how their love came to be, and it's honestly really sweet and romantic. Nonetheless, BMO ends up overhearing the story, which results in them having a new mindset of loving others. So BMO decides to use their heart as a way to jumpstart the remote. Fionna then asks if that could really work, and BMO responds by calling her Finn, which just tears my heartstrings, which are then torn even more as the remote ends up blowing BMO up. There is way too many deaths, man. This shit is like Together Again all over again. And this parallel isn't even far off, as they end up burying BMO in the exact same spot that Jake's grave was during his death in Together Again. Fionna, Cake, and Simon then decide to finally meet this Jerry that BMO kept mentioning, who I only came to the realization of who was about 10 seconds before he was shown, as they walk down a set of stairs only to see a green hue, and then they show the Lich. In Adventure Time Season 4 finale titled The Lich, he entered Prismo's time room and wished for all life to be extinct, which then teleported him into a world where this was a reality. During this episode, Finn was around 15 years old, and now during the events of this series, he is about 29, meaning that the lich has been in this wish-altered reality where everything was dead besides BMO for 14 years. He has nothing to do anymore, and he probably questions if his actions were even worth it. And so instead of killing them, he seems to get depressed. Regardless, Simon realizes that if there is no life here, there is no way for them to survive. And then Fionna pulls out the crown that I guess that she found in the Ice Kingdom junkyard earlier in the episode. Fionna hid this from the others because she doesn't want Simon to become the Ice King again, as she now understands how sad and insane he was under the curse of the crown. Simon then uses the lich as a power source to create the portal for Fionna and Cake to go back home, which manages to work, but when Simon thinks of Betty, a new portal opens. This time the portal is way bigger and red. It's gotta be the same portal that we saw Gulb come out of and Come Along With Me. The lich's eye also turns red with 4 yellow circles, and Gulb has 4 yellow eyes, and so it looks like the next episode is going to be about Gulb, and I already know it's gonna be a crazy one, probably even crazier than this episode, which was most definitely the best one so far. Adventure Time Fionna and Cake episodes 9 and 10 have been released, bringing this series to an end with an epic lore-filled finale. Today I will be discussing these episodes and connecting the dots to the original series, starting with Fionna and Cake episode 9, which is titled Casper and Nova. This episode begins with Fionna supposedly back in her magical world as her and Cake entered Simon's head again in the last episode. And in the very first scene of this world, we get to see Mr. Cupcake, Hunter Wizard, the dragon from the episode Memories of Boom Boom Mountain, and the Cyclops from the episode Another Way. Fionna and Cake then enter the city, which now seems to be infested with gum. And when they enter Gumball's candy shop, we see that he has turned into a corrupted version of the Mother Gum. The rest of the city also seems to be in ruins, and so Fionna and Cake run inside their apartment, only to see a very creepy Simon in the fridge. And then of course she wakes up from a dream, showing an opposite parallel to the first episode, where she was happy having a dream about being in a magical world, but now it's a nightmare of sorts about the exact same thing. Fionna then tells Marshall and Gary about their world being in Simon's head and how it's about to turn magical, and of course they don't believe her, but when Cake shows her new abilities, they quickly come to the realization that this is the truth. We then change focus onto Simon, who has now entered the red portal from the last episode alongside the lich, who tells Gulb about his devotion into embodying chaos and his effort to extinguish all life in their honor. And yet it gave him no satisfaction, and after succeeding he felt as if he had no purpose. But after giving this explanation and asking Gulb what he should do now, Gulb responds by ripping his body apart, and then he mushes him into one of the cubes that float around him, thus 100% most definitely killing the original lich from the main plotline in Adventure Time for good. Simon then tells Goldbetty that he feels like he wasted the chance that she gave to him when she saved him and brought him back to normal and Come Along With Me. And so his mindset of trying to help Fionna and Cake by turning into the Ice King to give them a chance at life remains. But when he goes to put the crown on, Goldbetty teleports his mind into someone else's. And unexpectedly, we jump 1,000 years in the future as we see Shermie and Beth, who were the 2 characters that were shown in Come Along With Me that are the supposed reincarnations of Finn and Jake. Simon's mind then gets transported into Shermie's, and after explaining to Beth, the 2 of them head to the library in order to find out where the ice crown is. And as they enter, we see the shell of the now dead turtle princess, so that's pretty sad. They then scour the books, and Shermie tosses one to Beth, which is titled TM for Pups. And it actually has Jake on it, and this is actually a callback to his mother's manual shown in the episode Jake the Dad. It warms my heart knowing that he made one as well. Nonetheless, Simon and Beth begin to get attacked by the pagelings, which Finn met in the episode titled Paper Pete. And so Simon grabs the book about the crown, and they manage to get away. When they open the book, a choice game of sorts is presented with the 2 characters named Casper and Nova, who are actually on their own adventure to find the crown. But we then go back into Fiona's world and see the Scarab once more, who is now seeming way more on edge and scarier than before. And of course, just before the episode ends. This episode was actually insane. From the lich dying to more Shermie and Beth scenes, this is literally everything I could have asked for. But now on to episode 10, which is titled Cheers. This episode begins with Simon and Beth continuing to play the game book in order to find the crown. But they get interrupted by Chuskus, which I'm pretty sure we saw die and in the Dead World in the Distant Lands episode together again. So this scene honestly confuses me. Maybe it's like his son or something. But we then go back to Fiona's world where the Scarab has now appeared, and he explains that they have ruined and infected these other worlds, which they have killed many people that weren't supposed to die yet, and to some extent probably changed multiple timelines. Cake then sets 3 of the other creatures that the Scarab has captured, and we see a very wholesome island creature. But the Scarab ends up killing it in cold blood. The Scarab then began to rip Fiona's world apart, which reminded me of the remote from Gumball, which was used to turn the world into a static void. I just thought there was an interesting similarity between them. Nonetheless, the story of Casper and Nova continues, in which has actually been confirmed to be a representation of Betty and Simon, as Betty dropped everything for him and spent her entire life trying to help him, which is portrayed by Casper, and how Simon should have done what Betty wanted wanted to do instead of letting her drop everything for his sake, which is portrayed by Nova. When Nova gets in trouble, Simon realizes he could have been more thoughtful and chose her choices instead of always choosing Casper's. And as soon as Simon comes to this realization, he gets teleported back and goes back into the memory of Betty about to leave on her trip, and instead of letting her drop everything for him, he chooses to go on the expedition that she had planned. Adventure Time always manages to sneak some sort of life lesson into their episodes. Whether for the watcher or for the character on screen to gain a sense of development, this show can genuinely teach you how to be a better person in multiple scenarios, and that is one of the main reasons why I love this series so much. Cake then becomes Godzilla, and they make an effort into making us believe that she is overextending herself and tired out from doing such an action that would be easy for Jake during the original series. But obviously time has passed in that world just as much as it had in this one, meaning that Cake is probably old and nearing death just as Jake was. And I have to say that I genuinely thought that Cake would die during this finale. Simon then starts to believe that his life matters and finally throws the crown away. He then states that the responsibility of saving Fiona's world is just too much, which causes him to literally puke it out. And when he touches it, it turns into a dandelion symbolizing a wish from Prismo. Simon gives this wish to Fionna, who then wishes for everyone to have a wish. As Golb sends Simon home, we see that Fiona's world has become authorized and a part of the rest of the multiverse. Whether this was due to everyone's wish or Golb caused this, I'm honestly unsure. But because of this, the Scarab's magic no longer works and the world begins to put itself back together. But as the Scarab is so set on destroying the world, he begins to do so with his bare hands. Meanwhile, we see what feels like a conclusion to Simon's story as he lays in a grass field with a blue butterfly. And it seems he is finally free and happy to be alive as he smiles for the first time in a while. As Fiona's world continues to be torn apart, Finn's kid and Little Destiny from the Farm World universe appear alongside the talking squirrel and the baby Finn, which are both from two other worlds, and I'm actually so confused and really want to know how they all came together and how they even managed to get here. But regardless, they then manage to put the Scarab in one of the eggs that he used to trap the other creatures, and so the fight finally comes to an end. We then get a montage of the characters rebuilding the city and living their lives, and continue to see how much happier Simon is. And it's genuinely a really satisfying conclusion, and it gave off a very similar vibe to the Adventure Time finale. But that about wraps up episode 10, finally concluding Fionna and Cake season 1. I really enjoyed this series, and I'm glad they included so many other characters and tied it into the original series instead of it just being like the fanfic episodes that we saw. As much as I am down for that, this probably was the better route. If there ever happens to be a season 2 announced, expect a video about it here on the channel. But most likely the show will continue to do other spin-offs down the road, hopefully such as Shermie and Beth. Nonetheless, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe and check out my other social medias linked down below. But until the next video, peace out.